landing into the water. With a rescue tube and a tow line, they watched from their boat, but their day wasn't laborious, as the 19 skydivers landed in perfection, much to the delight of the onlookers. Louis Mendy, Grts.
That report by Louis Mendy takes us to our first break. Welcome back. 50 years ago today, and barely midway through what was a glamorous presidency, John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. Half a century on, thousands of Americans gather in different parts of the United States to mark an event that forever changed American political history. We have details on how people assembled to mark today.
These streets and the baggage and the burden that came with all of that, and city leaders are hoping that this event will put a lot of that to rest, that they will show that they are coming here to honor the life and legacy of President John Kennedy, who is still considered one of the most popular presidents in the history of the United States. And they're hoping that this event, being done for the first time officially in the city, will go a long way to kind of put that to rest and put that bad baggage behind them, if you will.
And a lot is planned there too. The statue. Tell us what's on the agenda.
Organizers say that...
Well, there will be a moment of silence. The program starts here in about a half an hour. It's really a very simple program. A brief speech from the mayor of the city. There will also be excerpts of speeches from President Kennedy written or read by the historian David McCullough. And then it culminates with the unveiling of a new monument here on the grassy knoll, which, interestingly enough, will carry the inscription of the last paragraph that President Kennedy was supposed to give. He was literally just a mile away from the Trademark building, where there was a room full of people waiting for him to give this speech, and he was on his way there. But when the motorcade raced by, President Kennedy had been wounded, and the motorcade was racing to Parkland Hospital, not the Trademark, where he was supposed to give that speech. And that monument will carry the last paragraph of that speech that he never gave, for a new generation, as they like to say, to be able to read those words and inspiration of President Kennedy.
And I think for our viewers, not just in the U.S., but elsewhere, it may be surprising for them to know that according to polls, even though that level has gone down, that a majority of Americans still believe in a conspiracy surrounding the assassination of John F. Kennedy that day 50 years ago in Dallas. What are people telling you about that?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I've lived in Dallas a long time, and I've always been struck by the fact that any time of year, there are always people here in Dealey Plaza standing in the grassy knoll, looking at that spot on the road, looking up at the 6th floor window. And on the grassy knoll, every weekend, you will find conspiracy theorists who come here. And up until this day, many of the conspiracy theorists really, turned out and stood on the grassy knoll. They would observe their own moments of silence here on this day, but they're not around here today. They're cordoned off outside of the security perimeter that has been set up around Dealey Plaza. But as you mentioned, polls show that a majority of Americans, I think the last one that I saw was about 60%, believe that there was a conspiracy, that Lee Harvey Oswald did not act alone. And a lot of that continues today. And you see it. I've been struck by the fact that walking around here in Dealey Plaza the last few days, and the massive crowds that are turning out, spending a lot of time here, and you still hear from a lot of those people who either they're selling books or they're selling pamphlets with all of those details. That continues today.
Ed Lavendera, thanks very much. Live in Dallas, of course, we'll have a lot more coverage.
The search for survivors is underway in the Latvian capital Riga after a roof collapsed on Thursday evening in a busy supermarket. Dozens of people have been confirmed dead, including some of the rescue workers. As we hear in this CNN report, it is not clear how many people are still trapped under the rubble.
used there. There are people apparently who are on the scene who are trying to reach their relatives who might still be trapped inside the rubble on their cell phones to see if they can get through to them anyway, to see if they might still be alive. And at the same time, you still have the rescue crews there on hand that are now using some very heavy cutting equipment to try and get some of that steel, get through some of that steel and concrete that, of course, has collapsed. It's a very delicate operation because on the one hand, you have to make sure you have enough power to cut through all that, but you also don't want to injure the people who might still be buried beneath or perhaps cause all of that rubble to shift and possibly crush people. Again, the authorities say they believe that the death toll could continue to rise. Let's look at what happened throughout the night. Desperate relatives stand by, hoping their loved ones might still be alive somewhere in the rubble of the collapsed shopping center. I have a wife in there, this man says. There is no information about her, whether she's dead or alive. Wherever I call, there is no information. Do you still believe she's alive, the reporter asks. Of course, I must believe, he says. But for many, there is tragic certainty that their loved ones were killed. Dozens have been confirmed dead, with the toll rising throughout the night. Eyewitnesses say the Maxima shopping center collapsed like a house of cards while the store was busy with shoppers on their way home from work. And when first responders arrived on the scene, further portions of the roof fell, killing several firefighters. We are still working inside, one of the heads of the rescue operation says. The situation may change all the time. Falls are happening from time to time. Therefore, it's very dangerous to work inside. Crews began clearing some of the rubble as rescue efforts were ongoing. The Maxima shopping center was completed just 2 years ago and was even named among the top 3 building designs in all of Latvia. It's not clear what caused the collapse. Some say it might have been faulty construction or building material stored on the roof. Police have started the investigation already, Latvia's prime minister says. The criminal process has started about violating construction norms, which has caused serious consequences. The Maxima shopping center was one of the symbols of the new up-and-coming Latvia, a country that's seen strong economic growth in the years since the end of Soviet rule, but remains among the poorest countries in Europe. Now Latvia is left to clear the debris, investigate what happened, and to mourn those who lost their lives in one of the worst tragedies this nation has seen in recent times. And of course, Pauline, as we've just noted, with a building that's still that young, of course, faulty construction is something that the authorities are looking very closely at. But also there is the theory out there that perhaps a winter garden was being constructed on the roof, that soil had actually been put on the roof to try and grow grass there. And it's been raining quite heavily in Riga in the past couple of days, and that maybe the rain might have drenched the soil that was being put on there, made it so heavy that the roof simply couldn't sustain it. But again, the investigation, of course, is just getting started. So close and so soon after this tragedy took place, Pauline.
And British police are calling it the worst incidents of modern-day slavery uncovered in the UK. 3 women have been freed from a house in central London where they were apparently held against their will for decades. Police say the youngest of the women had actually never had many outside contact with the world. A man and a woman have been arrested over the incident. Details in this DWTV report.
Up on Friday morning to find their district making international headlines. Many people are shocked to learn of a case of modern slavery in their London district.
If it's true, then it's both appalling and extraordinary. It's difficult to understand how people could be imprisoned with nobody noticing for 30 years.
Others were less shocked by the news.
But sadly, I'm not surprised, actually. I was just walking along thinking about how easily I think that could happen in central London.
After watching a TV program about forced marriage, one of the women called the helpline of a charity featured in the program.
Well, they basically told us that they were being held and they needed support to come out of a very difficult situation. As a charity, we take every call very seriously. We have a 24/7 helpline which they contacted, and from that moment onwards it was very sensitive negotiations in order to assist them in escaping.
A man and woman, both 67, were arrested in connection with the case and have been freed on bail. Police say they're not British nationals. Few other details are known so far.
In Germany, there's been another sign of
Queen, and before we take leave of you, a quick reminder of the day's top stories. The APRC and the opposition NRP are set for another showdown in the race for the vacant Kiang West constituency seat, this after the completion of nomination. Deputies have adopted the financial statement and activity reports of the Gambia Granite Corporation and the assets